I just can't do it anymore. Minimalism is depressing. I just had to get that out of my system to make me feel better about myself. This is my therapy session, you and me here. So while I speak with some sort of apparent authority, I'm really just trying to figure it out. And in my brain, minimalism is depressing. It's enough for a lack of trying. And I think it's this mouse that broke the camel's back for me. Growing up, I was always obsessed with vintage packaging design. When I was around 12 years old, I set up my bedroom like a small store where I displayed my collection of old bottles, cigarette tins, all in a homemade display case. When my mom and I were out doing errands, I would beg my mom not to stop at toy stores, but antique stores, and I still have many of these things. They often make an appearance on this channel. So I look at my love of relics and think about how they're tied to who I am, like how my pockets fill with rocks, shells, and sea glass that my daughter collects at the beach. It's moments like this I can't deny who I am and that I find minimalism is boring. If you follow my channel, you may have heard that I'm slowly learning that it's okay to like things, to personally like them. But this comes up against a weird pressure that, especially as a creative person, I'm supposed to embrace minimalism. I went to school for graphic design, and we learned that God lives in the white space. We fought like crusaders in Herman Miller chairs for our white space against Philistine clients who didn't want it. At home, I'd look at magazines or Pinterest and see these minimal, white, perfectly curated spaces held up as aspirational and designed. And it's hard not to get sucked in, but in my case, it always ends up as an unfortunate slurry of inspiration and guilt. When it feels like minimalism is synonymous with good, I'd end up asking myself, am I bad? And I'm also a director, a commercial director. And while I'm out location scouting, I end up in clean, minimalist houses and spaces and apartments. Every brand wants to shoot its commercial in a $2 million modern home, and I hate it for the lack of soul and life. It's just not real. The coffee table book's chosen carefully for their aesthetic value, for its appearance on a shelf, rather than the information it contains. A perfectly curated bar cart with glasses that are being saved for a better time, never intended to be actually used. They feel like the place where NPCs live. When you ask me to think of the home of a serial killer or narcissist or someone struggling with scary stuff, I imagine a minimalist home or condo or space. And why is the carpet all wet, Todd? I don't know, Margot. And conversely, is it a coincidence that warm, lived-in homes always look better on film? The weird, eccentric mentors are the ones who live in spaces filled with details of their life, interests, and learning. These are the homes with history and stories, and I want to live here. I remember the intro to Ray Bradbury Theater more than the show itself. And what would Guillermo del Toro's work be like if he felt guilt and shame for the curiosities that inspire his work? The artifacts. Form is not more important than function. It's assumed that modern and minimal are positive attributes. But look at my 2017 MacBook Pro. No full-size USB ports, no SD card reader, so I have to buy and lose and rebuy a bunch of terrible dongles, removing keys I use all the time, and giving me a touch bar that I didn't ask for. When a tool's singular function is inconvenient to the form, and the form wins, you lose. You have one job, mouse. One job. And now, I love my MX Master mouse. It's ugly as hell, but nothing nearly as bad as being up against a deadline and having to charge your mouse. If you're a minimalist, then that's great. That's great for you. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'd love to know how it's working for you and what it's providing you, with the understanding that everyone is different. I'm confident enough to know that it doesn't have to be a religion for me. I'm also confident enough to change. And maybe an aspect of your minimalism can be applied to my life. Maybe so I don't become a hoarder. Right now, my philosophy is organization over minimalism, utility over minimalism. My kids hate my much used question when we're tidying up. Where is its home? And if it's not useful or starts becoming parasitic, get rid of it. But not with the end goal of becoming a minimalist. With the end goal of having a happier life surrounded by the things that make you happy and stripped of the things that have no use or bring you anxiety. I'm finding my way. Not just does it spark joy, but how much joy does it spark, and is it worth heating and cooling and subsidizing rent for that object? My goal is not to be minimalist, it's to be organized. I want to stop looking to others for what my personal life should look like. To not feel guilt for loving things, to not shame people for loving things like Beanie Babies or garden gnomes. To not buy things because they're trendy, but instead buy things that are higher quality and more useful, even if they're uglier. To be able to tell you why I love every object in my life. I'm tired of being pressured to get rid of everything I own. I'm okay if my home becomes a little museum of my life, a physical expression of how I've grown and what remains. It's why we have museums, to remind us of our past, good and bad, and to keep pushing us forward. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some junk to go sort through.